What happens when a ruthless HOA chairman tries to break a man who has nothing to lose? They thought they knew how this would end. They thought it was just another story of a man too old, too tired, too alone to fight back. They were wrong. Because when federal agents showed up at the HOA's doorstep, everything changed. And what happened next left the entire town speechless. If you asked anyone around Millstone County about Samuel Rhodes, they'd all tell you the same thing. That man takes care of his own. Sam wasn't just another name on property records or some old guy living off the past. He was the backbone of his land, his family's land, the kind of man who knew every inch of the soil beneath his boots. At 64, Sam had more calluses on his hands than most men collected in 2 lifetimes, and he wore them like a badge of honor. This place, this land, it wasn't just dirt and trees. It was his grandfather's sweat, his mother's garden, and the footsteps of his children. This was where his story began, and where, if he had his way, it would end. That's why, when his old buddy Charlie Denon came barreling up the long gravel driveway, kicking up dust like a summer storm, Sam knew something was wrong. Charlie didn't even wait for the engine to stop rumbling before throwing the truck door open. He practically stumbled out, his face flushed and slick with sweat, breathing like he'd run the entire way. "Sam," Charlie panted, "when's the last time you checked your north line?" Sam's brow furrowed. "What kind of question is that?" Charlie shook his head, swallowing hard. "They're building on it, Sam." And just like that, the air left Sam's lungs. For a moment, he just stared at Charlie like the words didn't make sense. But then his body moved before his mind caught up. His hand grabbed the old brass key hanging by the door, and in a blur, he was behind the wheel of his Ford, tires spitting gravel as he floored it toward the back edge of his property. The north line. Acres upon acres of untouched fields and thick woods passed him by as he drove. It was where his granddad taught him how to set a fence post straight as an arrow. It was where his mama planted wildflowers every spring. It was where his kids ran barefoot under the sun. And it was his, or so he thought. By the time Sam skidded to a stop at the clearing near the old dirt path, a sick feeling settled deep in his gut. And when he climbed out of his truck and saw it with his own 2 eyes, his stomach twisted into knots. Bulldozers, concrete trucks, crane operators. His family's towering oaks, gone, felt like weeds. Dust and debris hung thick in the air. Workers moved like ants, pouring concrete slabs, hammering beams, and framing walls. Truck after truck backed in and unloaded materials. It was construction chaos. And then he saw it. A giant sign. Fresh paint. Bright colors. "Welcome to Silverbrook Estates, a premier HOA community." Sam's fingers clenched around the steering wheel, so tight his knuckles turned white. His jaw locked. A goddamn HOA. The same people who sent letters about weeds and Christmas decorations, who fined folks for a mailbox being 2 inches too tall. The same kind who thought they could tell a man how to live on his own property. And now they thought they could take his? No. Hell no. He slammed the door of his truck so hard the echo carried over the racket of construction. He didn't stop for anything. Not the workers. Not the forklifts. Not the noise. His boots kicked up dirt as he stormed toward the man barking orders at the site. The foreman. "What the hell is going on here?" Sam's voice cut through the noise like a shotgun blast. The foreman didn't look up right away. "Excuse me," he muttered, flipping a clipboard. Sam took a step closer. "I said, what the hell are you doing on my land?" Finally, the man looked at him, like he was glancing at an old stray dog he wasn't sure was worth kicking. "Sir, do you live in this community?" "I own this land," Sam said slowly, teeth clenched so tight it hurt. The foreman smirked. "Not anymore." The words hit Sam like a hammer. "What did you just say?" The man shrugged, flipping through papers like he was checking a grocery list. "According to this," he tapped the clipboard, "this land now belongs to Silverbrook Estates HOA." He didn't wait for a reply. "You got a problem? Take it up with the courts." And just like that, he turned away. Like Sam was nobody. Like he was some old man getting in the way of progress. Like he wasn't the living, breathing legacy of this land. And that's when Sam realized they had the wrong one today. By the time Sam stormed into the law offices of Megan Holloway, he was shaking. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. Megan was one of the best property attorneys in the state. Sharp as a knife, tougher than boot leather. Sam had known her since she was a kid hanging around his daughter at the county fair. But today, he wasn't here for a reunion. He slapped a thick folder on her desk. "Megan," he growled, "I need answers. Now." Megan pushed her glasses up her nose. "Hello to you too, Sam." "I'm not joking," he snapped. "They're building houses on my land." And that's when her smile disappeared. Megan didn't waste time. She flipped through the documents, her eyes scanning like a machine. "Who's they?" she asked. "Silverbrook Estates," Sam said. "A damn HOA." She frowned. "And you're telling me you never sold it?" "I never signed a damn thing," he growled. For a long moment, Megan said nothing. She just kept scanning. But then her expression changed. Darkened. She tapped a few keys on her computer and spun the screen around. "According to county records, Sam," she hesitated, "you don't own that land anymore." Sam's heart nearly stopped. "What?" His voice was a whisper. "Look for yourself." And there it was. His name was gone. In its place, a chain of transactions. Sold to Evan Mercer. Transferred to Crescent Development, LLC. Acquired by Silverbrook Estates, HOA. Sam shook his head. No, this is a scam." Megan sighed. "If it is, they cover it up well." Sam slammed his palm on the desk. "What do we do?" "If we can prove fraud," Megan said, "we can fight it. But it'll take years. HOA has deep pockets." Sam leaned forward, his eyes hard. "Then we don't fight fair." That night, Sam went to work. He dug through every piece of paper his family had ever signed. He called old friends who knew the land's history. And that's when he found it, buried in the records. The name Evan Mercer. A man Sam had never met. A man who didn't seem to exist. And that's when he knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was deliberate. The next day, a stranger showed up. A young man, glasses sliding down his nose, a camera bag slung over his shoulder. "Mr. Rhodes?" he asked. Sam crossed his arms. "Who's asking?" "Name's Caleb Foster. Journalist." Sam didn't move. Didn't shake his hand. Didn't blink. "You're a little late, son," Sam said. "They already took it." Caleb smiled faintly. "That's why I'm here." What Caleb showed Sam made his blood run cold. It wasn't just Sam's land. Silverbrook Estates was part of a much bigger pattern. Dozens of black families, elderly folks, veterans, all quietly losing land to shell companies, which flipped the properties to the HOA. And at the center of it all, Thomas Keene, chairman of Silverbrook Estates, HOA. "They targeted you," Caleb said quietly. And that's when Sam made a choice. They want to fight? They get a war. They turned his house into a war room. Stacks of records, maps, timelines. Caleb's laptop buzzed with new files every hour. And then Sam found it. A document, dated when Sam had been out of state, signed by Thomas Keene himself, posing as trustee for Crescent Development, LLC. Fraud. Undeniable. And then Sam remembered something else. A designation his family had secured in 1968. His land? Protected by federal law as a historical site. The HOA had bulldozed federally protected land. Sam smiled. They did it to themselves. He made the calls. To the feds. To the state. To the Department of the Interior. And then he waited. 48 hours later, it began. Black SUVs. Federal agents. Clipboards and cameras. The HOA's construction site? Shut down. Thomas Keene? Furious. Sweating through his shirt. Yelling at inspectors. And when Keene's eyes found Sam on his porch, sipping coffee, Sam raised his cup in a quiet toast. Checkmate. But this wasn't over. Keene came to his door the next morning in a sleek SUV, dressed like a man still pretending he had control. Sam didn't move from his chair. Keene smiled. We got off on the wrong foot. You bulldozed my land, Sam said flatly. Keene offered money. A generous buyout. Sam laughed in his face. You already took my land, he said. Now you want me to sell it. And when Keene dropped the act, his threats were cold and smooth. We'll make your life difficult. Sam stood. You already did. And he sent Keene packing. They retaliated. Fines. Code violations. Cut his water. Threatened to demolish his home. But Sam Rhodes didn't flinch. He'd faced harder men than Thomas Keene. And then, with Caleb's help, they uncovered everything. The money laundering, the offshore accounts, the bribery. They turned it over to federal investigators. And the hammer fell. The HOA was dismantled. Every stolen property returned. Thomas Keene, 8 years in federal prison. Silverbrook Estates, abandoned. And Sam Rhodes, still standing. He sat on his porch, staring at his land. The land his grandfather had tamed, his mother had loved, and his children had grown on. They tried to erase him, but in the end, it was they who disappeared. This wasn't just a win. It was justice. And Sam Rhodes made damn sure the world knew. You don't steal from a man who has nothing to lose. Because a man like that has everything to fight for.